Good morning. How we doing? I just want to give you guys a quick update on kind of where we're at, what's happening. Seems like this is the end of the session, right? So we have to remain vigilant. They are trying to make some moves that are not necessarily good, but we have some things that are working in our favor. So I want to talk about it. I'm gonna let some people kind of jump on here and we'll kind of get into it. And so, a couple things that we have working in our favor right now currently is obviously the budget. They are still trying to pass this major tax bill. It's up to 15 billion, and it's a transportation packet. And so, part of that is with this process. It's making it harder for them to focus on the bills that we're following, right? Which is the gun bills. We have House Bill 3076, that's still live. We also have Senate Bill 243. I just got word that 243 is on the move and it's going to go to the floor for the second reading and it's going to be on 623. Okay. And then it's going to get the third reading is that's when they're going to vote on it on the House floor on 624. Okay. And so, we're looking at tomorrow we're going to have a reading today and then tomorrow is going to be the final reading and that's when they're going to be voting. The one thing that we have going for us is now this thing, if it passes the House floor, it has to go back to the Senate because they added the amendment to it. And so that's something we still have time, but it's something that we definitely need to be aware of and be part of this process. And can't stress that enough. So if you guys are tuning in, there's things that we need to focus on. Obviously, focus on who our representatives are, who our senators are, and making sure that we reach out to them and we're in strong opposition of Senate Bill 243. Okay. That's what we should be doing. We should be contacting our representatives saying that, we're one of your constituents and we are requesting that you're a no on this bill as it's been amended. Okay. So, just something to be aware of. I know it's the last thing we want to do, but we have to be a part of this process. And it's getting harder for them to maneuver, right? And a lot of it is because of the pressure from all over different parts of the state and different focuses. And so that's why I want you guys to make sure you guys know what you guys can do. And so 243 and so the amendment they're going to be hearing on the floor is it's going to be the rapid fire device ban. It's also going to be a ban on, concealed carry in public spaces. And they also added the restrictions from Measure 114 to that. Okay. So it's lumped into this ugly bill. And so that's where we have to be a part of this process because if we don't, we're going to be in deep trouble. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I wanted to give you guys that update. It just changed. And so I was watching it this morning. I hadn't seen anything. And so then I'm in contact with some senators, some representatives up there, kind of what's happening. And I do have some good information that I will report is it looks like the way things are standing. And obviously things can always change. Okay. But from what I'm hearing, is that 3076 is most likely not going to make it. And so that's a good thing for us. Okay. So, there's been a lot of people that are, especially on the reps that are trying to pass this monstrosity of a bill. But the thing is, they don't have the support. And it seems like it's kind of turned into kind of a pet project for some of these folks up there. And so it doesn't have the support from the constituents. It doesn't even have a lot of support from the rank and file. It's just like the leadership is taking, and this is going to be our cause, and so we're going to try to push it forward. But it's just so big that it's not going to go anywhere, and so that's a good thing for us. And so, that's kind of what I want to bring and focus on. So obviously, I'm going to focus on more heavily on 243 because that is the one that's still moving until I hear otherwise. Okay. So, this alert today that I got and I want to get out to you guys, just the fact that, 243 was scheduled for the reading. It's going to, and the way it works, right? So it's going to get a second reading and that's going to be today. Tomorrow is going to be the third reading. And so that's when they're going to do the floor vote. And so from that that part of the process, since there was an amendment, which was a dumb move on their part, right? Because now they have to start the process over, and it has to go over to the Senate side to go back through the process again. You know, the best thing we can do, like, and this is like, probably talking out of turn here, is to get the senators to walk out. And and obviously I don't know where they're at on that, but it's a little thing that can run out the clock, because they have until June 29th. Okay, that's when the the session is it has to be completed. If not, then they have to be scheduled for a special session. A special session would be in September, most likely. And so that's where they're going to have to come back. They're still going to have to deal with the budget, because they still haven't passed a budget. Okay, due to the Oregon state constitution, they're required to have a budget. And so that's how all of these agencies, like Oregon State Police, ODOT, all the DHS, all these other agencies are funded, is through the budget, and they don't have that done. And so that's another thing that we have working in our favor, is it's just time on the clock. Okay, so the sands of the hourglass are starting to run out on them, so that's a good thing for us. And so it looks like I got a comment here on YouTube. Let's kind of look at this. And yes, so we've been talking about that in our Facebook group, the Oregon Firearms Advocates group. So if you guys are interested in joining that, you can kind of see what we're doing behind the scenes. And so there's been talks of that, is contacting and filing civil rights complaints against the state of Oregon. I have seen things where, like, the Trump administration, the DOJ is kind of watching what's happened with our elections the last couple of years. And so there might be some investigations there. Let's hope, because it's going to bring light to all the things that are happening here in the state. And so I think there's some good things. Obviously, what I'm trying to do, and I don't want to kind of take away our time and our focus. This would be something. Let's get the session done, and I think that would be a really good idea, is to have a mass, like, we all kind of bombard them to let them know this is what we're dealing with here in Oregon, and hopefully that will be a good thing. But I think that's a really good comment, and that's something that we should be doing. I just want to get through the next couple days. That's kind of my focus. And so, obviously we're praying. We're praying that this stuff just goes away. This stuff is not good for Oregon. It's not good for you as a gun owner, as a concealed carrier, and it's not good for our budgets, right? So I'm from Eugene, and the city of Eugene, they do not have the funding to keep the Amazon pool open for children. They're closing the library a couple days a week because of budget shortfalls. So there's all these things that are being impacted by the budget. Yet now we're going to add another cost to the city governments, right? Or the county governments. It makes no sense. Okay. So that's where the best thing we can do is just reach out to our representatives, our senators, make sure they know what's going on and how we feel about this bill and how we want this bill to be stopped. Okay. I don't know how we stop it. Either they walk out or they just get enough together to say, no, we're not going to pass this. This does not make any sense to the state of Oregon, because they always say it's about public safety. It's not about public safety. Okay. Taking away my ability, your ability to carry a gun in public, in a public space, never is going to make the state any safer. And there's no data or study that would support that. Okay. So especially what's happening around the world, right? So we're having, we're bombing Iran. There's, Iran's firing back. It just happened a little bit ago. So, I guarantee there's cells that are here that came across the border illegally. And that's something that puts all of us at risk, right? And so we have to make sure that we have those guns, we carry those guns, we know where we are at all times, and we are armed lawfully, and we protect ourselves and our families, So that's our responsibility as prepared citizens, right? And taking away that fact through another arbitrary law is really going to do nothing to help save lives. And it's all delusional. It's not going to be it's not going to be, they're trying to create this utopia of no guns, but the problem is there's so many guns here that it's impossible to make this utopia. Plus they don't understand human nature, that bad people are going to still do bad things with guns. And so I don't know. I like to think that they're not that dumb, but I think they're crazy like a fox, where they're trying to do this as a way to disarm us so they can just do whatever they want to do to us, and so I'm hoping that's not the fact, but I mean, just there's so many dang laws. So and so I got to get some good comments here right here. So Jabs. So this one right here. So at this point, and one thing I did hear this weekend from one of my partners up there in the house is so our senators or representatives can only have a certain amount of excused or unexcused absences. Okay, so they can have up to 10, and then they would lose their seat. Somebody have to run for reelection to take their spot, right? And so one thing I heard that actually the House and Senate leadership can actually go back in the record and amend it. So even if that absence was excused to be a jerk, they can actually change that to an unexcused absence as a way to disqualify them for running for reelection. I think that's a super dirty move, okay? Because what that does is that nullifies the voice of the constituents that put that person in their district in place, and so that takes away the voice. And I mean, look at this. I mean, that's by definition a tyrannical type government, right? Is if you are going to do whatever you can to keep your power and silence those that might have a differing view or opinion and or might be in a different place. You know, our founding fathers would view that as something that could have been tyrannical. So it's gross, and it's not the way it should be done. You know, if your ideas are so good, you should not be changing the rules midstream to make sure that you continue to win. It's gross. So I recommend, if depending on how many days they have absence, and we're getting to the end of the session, like it might be a good. I did see today there was a press release put out by the Oregon Republicans, that there's been representatives and senators that are walking off the floor and they're holding up the process, because they're trying to stop this tax package, which is House Bill 2025, and that's going to be $15 billion. It's going to ODOT. It's going to raise all of our taxes, and that's been my kind of my thing is like, let's walk out on the taxes, and then the byproduct would be to stop these gun bills, right? So, that's something where, because I know that the gun issue for me, it's an important issue, but there's people up there that the guns is a secondary or a third or fourth down the line issue, right? So, but the one thing that we all have together is we can't afford more taxes. We can't afford our gas to go up 60 cents a gallon. We cannot afford employment taxes and all these other things that are going on. So I think the best unifying message would be to walk out on because of the tax. Okay, I think that's the thing that crosses all party lines. It affects the majority of Oregonians, and so that might be a way to stop these things. And so that's something to think about. So LE, yeah, I like this comment. One thing that we need to focus on, right, is LE needs to back the people, right? So we're in this together, right? So obviously we have good elected officials, we have good sheriffs. It's really important your sheriff, right? You know their stance on the Constitution. You know how they feel when it comes to further restriction, because ultimately they're the chief law enforcement in your county, and so it's important to know how they feel on this stuff. So maybe reach out and see kind of where they're at on and if they're paying attention. And so, because we're all in this together, like as prepared citizens, obviously we're there, we can help protect as enforcement helps protect. So like we're all in this together. We're all good guys working towards a common goal, and that's the safety of our states. So that's something that just know where your law enforcement stands. Some are going to be a little bit more, so that's some are going to be a little bit more respectful of the Constitution. Other ones are going to be more political, like a politician. Like you look at the big counties like Clackamas County or Multnomah County, typically those sheriffs, they're elected officials, so they've got to kind of walk this fine line because they're going to have to obviously adhere to the Constitution, but they also have to look at the majority in their county. So it's a complex situation, obviously. So yeah, right here. So people that break laws do not follow laws by definition. And the thing I look at here is they create so many laws that it's actually impossible for us to be law abiding now. So what it's like now we have to be responsible, right? So we be responsible citizen. We're responsible, for the safety of ourselves, our families, So that's kind of the unfortunate thing. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make us all criminals. We could also look at this could be a way to further disarm us, right? So if we're convicted of a crime, it could cost us our gun rights. And so this might be it could be a 5 or 10 year plan where they look at disarming the entire state by turning all of us into criminals. So, I'd like to think that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but some of that stuff does make sense to me. So I try to be kind of reasonable with my approach, and so this stuff is not good. And let's see what else. No, I think you're right. I that's why I say I think they're crazy like a fox or stupid like a fox. I think that they have an agenda, and I think the agenda is going to be bringing the whole West Coast kind of on the same plane, and so we're going to be following California off the cliff. Washington is going very much similar to California, and then we're kind of in the middle because we got court cases that are tying things up. There's court cases tying things up in both states, but the whole point is they want to create this Western wall of gun control. It's never worked. It never will work. It's not designed to work. What it's designed to do is to further restrict, make it harder for you to protect yourself, but also a way for them to fundraise and continue to take away your rights. And so that's why it's really important that we're part of this process. So that's a really good comment. So thank you for that. No, 100%. I really respect your sheriff, Sheriff Cody Bowen. A tremendous guy. He knows the Constitution. He supports the Constitution, and we need 35 more sheriffs just like him. There's some great sheriffs out there. So a lot of them not as vocal as him. And one thing to note about Sheriff Cody Bowen, he's actually one of the plaintiffs in the federal case against Measure 114. So tremendous guy, does a lot for his constituents. So he should be the model for our sheriffs. And so I know there's a lot of other great sheriffs out there, but that's the one that always comes to mind is when we're talking about a good constitutional sheriff. He's one of them. So that's a good comment. So Marion County, that's a good one. So I saw him in a hearing the other day when I was up there, and seemed like a decent person. And I don't know. Marion County is kind of interesting. Okay, so a lot of the stuff that what they're doing is they're trying to, when they're talking about some of these cases, what they're trying to do is they're trying to make it so if we're going to challenge, like if we have a new gun regulation, they want to make it so we can only challenge it in Marion County. Okay. So Marion County is obviously that's where the Oregon legislature is. And so it's really easy for the Oregon legislature to actually control what happens inside of that county. And so we're talking about funding for projects for, it could be the courts, right? So if there's a project that a judge or a court wants to see funded, a way for them to the Oregon legislature to kind of control the court is to approve funding that is earmarked for that court, right? And obviously they can't directly write a check to that judge, but it is a way to kind of grease the wheels. And that's why I think it's really, really important is to note that, if you take away our ability to argue a case in let's say Harney County, for example, we had a good ruling out of there. It makes it harder for all of us to have our voices represented, right? And so it nullifies, all these other counties across the state. So that's why it's a really, really bad one. And so not a fan of anything that's going to mandate any kind of legal challenge in that county. I think that's unconstitutional. That should, because everybody in the state is going to have to live under this new mandate, right? This new law. So why is it that we can only challenge it in that county? So that's the problem. And yeah, so Benton County, that's a different, I don't hear a lot about Benton County. I know that you have Corvallis, so I could see how that could happen in that county. And so just something to think about is know kind of where they're at, what they stand. But one thing to think about, our sheriffs, they are elected officials, right? So it would be that if you have a sheriff that's not going to support your rights or protect your rights, there's a way that you can actually, you can oust him by having an under sheriff run for election, and they can go head to head. So something to think about. So yeah, so that's the biggest thing is we still have time. Everything that I try to do with this stuff that I do like in the Facebook group or here on YouTube is I want to give people hope. Like I am not crying. I'm not afraid because I know how the system is designed to work, and we have some moves that we're making. And so I know that it's the bottom of the ninth and we've got two outs, but I want to make sure that people still have hope, because when we have hope, we're going to get involved. And when we give up hope, we're just going to accept our fate. We're going to just, put our heads down, our hands in our pocket, and we're going to go, dang it, we got a new law, you know? And I feel that we still have time to move. And I think it's really, really important to know is we still have to stay up to date. We have to note that, we have a hearing, or we have a reading today on Senate Bill 243. We also have the third and final reading tomorrow, on Senate Bill 243, and then it's got to go over to the Senate. Okay, so it's got to pass both these little checkpoints today and tomorrow, and then it's still got to go over there, and it's still got to make progress over there. And so, we still have hope, we still have moves, and and the great thing about the work that I'm doing, and being positive, is I'm getting access to the people up there that are in charge, that are making these decisions, so I can let you guys know, right? So everything that I get, when I get it, if I can publicize it in a way that it's not going to take away from their effectiveness up there. Like, I don't want to give the total game plan. I want to be kind of vague because I don't know who watches these videos, but I want you to know that there are plans going, and this is what they're doing. This is where we're going to try to go, and try to give you as much information as I can, but also make you feel like you're part of this process, because you really are. And so this is a really great comment right here. So this right here, the general. Okay, so thank you for this question. Okay, so the best thing we can do is we can, yes, please like the stream. I appreciate you. Appreciate you guys, and listening and trusting me and being kind to me. So the best thing that we can do going forward is, obviously, let's contact our state senator, our state representative, and let them know that you're in opposition to both of these bills. Okay, you can go on the oldest website. What I'll do is I'll put a link into the comments of this video. I'll pin it, and what you'll do is it's going to be a finder. Okay, so if you don't know who your representative or your senator is, you basically put in your zip code. It'll spit out who your representative is, who your senator is. There'll also be a link that you can send them an email. Okay, so what you'll do is you'll send them an email. In the title of your email, you're going to say, Senate Bill 243, or you could say / House Bill 3076. Okay, in the header of your email. And then what you'll do is you'll go ahead and just kind of reach out and say, hey, I'm one of your constituents. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a responsible gun owner, and I reject the fact that you're going to try to make me a criminal. And just say no. This is not about public safety. This is about further control and further restriction, and you do not support that. Okay, and be very frank, be very professional, right? And send out that email, and let's kind of let them know that we're paying attention, right? We're watching this stuff very, very closely. We're engaged, and we're going to continue to monitor this stuff. And so the best thing that we can kind of do is make sure that they know that they do work for us, and some of them do forget about that, and so it's our job to remind them. And if this does not go the way that we want it to go, then this is the fuel that we need for the next steps, right? So when the session is closed, then we start talking about recalls. We start looking for people that can run for office to replace them, right? And the only way that we can do that is making sure that we are part of this process. So that's the best thing we can do right now to get involved, is to make sure that everybody sees the video, everybody knows how to contact their senator, their representative, and everybody sends an email saying no more. Okay. And let's focus on the ones, and one thing to think about here is also look at to Senate Bill 243, Senate Bill 3075, is how many people in opposition submitted testimony. Okay, records of numbers. Okay, we had about 2,300 people that submitted opposition to Senate Bill 243. We had over 2,000 that submitted opposition to 3076. Okay, and so what that does is now all of that opposition is now attached to both of those bills. And so no matter where this goes, that's going to be part of the state record for however long it stays there, right? So it's part of the record. So if you guys were a part of this process in the beginning and you did that, thank you. You're part of this and you're part of the record. And so that's something to think about. That's kind of where I'm at. So that's kind of where I'm at. Not if we can help it. Okay. It's really, really easy. It's really easy to say they're just going to do it. But in reality, if they were going to do it, they already would have, right? And so that's where, excuse me, it's really easy to get and feel defeated and you feel like your voice doesn't matter. But, excuse me, it's also important to note that if they were going to do it, they already would have, right? So, and that's where I feel, and that's why I feel hopeful, and I hope you guys can feel hopeful as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. This is a real problem. But another problem here is the fact that not all conservatives voted in the last election. Okay, we look at when Measure 114 was passed in 2022, there was 160,000 Republicans that didn't vote. Okay, we lost Measure 114 by about 25,000 votes. Okay, there's a good possibility we could have had a different governor, and we could have knocked down Measure 114 if we would have all showed up and voted. Okay, the only way that we can stop this stuff is actually if we show up and make sure our vote is cast. Okay, I know there's a lot of fraud. The voter rolls should be cleaned up. I totally get it, but if we don't all do what we're supposed to do, engage civically, we have nobody to blame but ourselves, right? And so that's where obviously the cheat by mail is a huge problem. I'm not trying to discount that, but also I want to show you that there's things that we didn't do that we should have done that could have potentially helped this situation. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I hope you guys, I hope that makes sense. So Senate Bill 243 is still live. It's going to be moving. We're going to get the second reading today. Tomorrow, it's going to get the third and final. What I'd love to do, and I wish I could pull it off, is having a whole bunch of log trucks tomorrow, like circling the Capitol building. Because I don't know if you guys remember the Timber Unity. That was so awesome. And I was actually in the building doing some legislative stuff up there, and it was so loud. Like literally, they couldn't, like the air horns inside of the building, it was deafening. Nobody could focus. Nobody can concentrate. It was just like, it was so awesome. And what I'd love to do tomorrow is they're trying to vote is have the hot laps of log trucks with air horns again. That would be pretty amazing. But I don't think I can pull it off. But that's like in a perfect world, I'd have some sort of active civil disobedience like that. Let them know that we're paying attention and yeah, right there. uh, Dueling or tar and feathers. Remember that? They used to do that. So that's the thing. Yes, right there. And they're going to try to take your kicker as a way to supposedly fix the problem with wildland fire fighting. But the problem is we're not managing the forest. We should be thinning. We should be replanting. We should be doing things that other states do to manage to prevent forest fires, and we just let it burn. It's crazy. So I don't want to take too much more of your time. I appreciate you guys, watching, getting involved. So let's make sure today, after you get off this video, is obviously tell your friends, tell your family. We need to make sure that they know, what's happening. And let's send emails. Let's get up there. Let's email our senator, our representative, and make sure that they say no and they push back on 243, also 3076. Best case scenario, 3076 dies, which I think it's close to dying. So let's just kind of push it over the edge there, and that's kind of where I'm at. And so thank you, thank you for your support. One thing about me, so I've been up in that building 12 different times this session alone, and so I've submitted testimony. I've testified like 4 or 5 different times in their committee hearings. I was part of a panel up there with the NRA, and I've submitted testimony, done all these different things to help organize and make sure that my neighbors know what's happening up there. And so it's something where I learned by just getting involved. And so that's my hope for all of you that maybe are watching this or are new to my channel, is knowing that there's people just like you that are trying to help make a difference, and all they did was just get involved. And so that's where you guys are a full force multiplier to me and the others that are doing the work, is making sure that you guys are up to date, you guys are active, you're doing what we need you to do when it's time to do it. And that's how we replicate, and that's how we build this coalition and get more people involved. And so I really appreciate the support, and it's something that's really, really important, is to just to keep going until that session's done, right? So we have until the 29th, and I'm not going to give up, and I know there's many of us are not going to give up, and so I'll just keep you posted as anything changes. Just focus on the next 2 days. The next few days is 243 is going to get the reading today. It's going to go back to it's going to go to get the third reading tomorrow, and that's tentatively. The things might change if there's any hiccups in the reading of the bills on the House floor, and then it has to go to back to the Senate side because they added that amendment. So that's the greatest thing for us. That amendment might save the day because they're not going to have. They might run out of time. So that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah, no, I see that. No, that's the biggest thing, is now you are in control. You are going to work the system the way the system is designed to work, by showing up and doing the work. So if that's the one thing I can leave you with on this video. And I love the comment section. I really do. um, yes, I 100% agree. So it's just be a part of it. And then when we win and we can celebrate together, and or if we lose, we celebrate together either. Because either way, this is going to be challenged in court. It's going to go to court. There's no way around it, and that's what they don't understand. Is this is an automatic? You know, how you doing, G23? It's an automatic. It's gonna get. They're gonna get sued either way, and I think that's what we got to get better at as Oregonians. Is we have to get better at suing people. There's a lot of other states that are doing it, and they've been very effective at it. Hawaii's one of them. I have friends in Hawaii that are just doing really good stuff over there, and they're just suing them, and they win. And California, we're getting some rulings there, and there was a ruling that came out yesterday or this weekend, which was good. And I think that's something the one thing we don't like to do is we don't like to spend money on lawsuits because we feel like we're wasting that money, right? But the one thing that we think about these lawsuits is that's a way to preserve our rights, right? So if let's use Measure 114 for example. I don't want to take too much of your time. I don't want to babble. Yeah, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you, General. Have a good day. And so that's the thing here is, if we, like with Measure 114, if we sue them in court, we win, we get a precedent, and that makes it harder for them to bring other lawsuits or other legislation, excuse me. And so that's where we should be looking at this, is from like a 5 to 10 year goal for us as Oregonians, is if we can start attacking these little, the 554, which requires secure storage of our firearms at all times. It's basically a tax. If we're to, challenge that under the Heller decision or the Bruin decision, and we get a victory there, that's going to make it harder for them to continue to further restrict. So that's kind of where I'm at. So lawsuits win. Let's just make sure that we get to the next couple days. 243. Send your emails, please, and I'll keep you posted. So you guys have a great day. Happy Monday, and we will see you again. Thank you. Have a good day.